And it's right at 2 o'clock as promised, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. First of all, I'd just like to say thanks for joining us for the first Revize webinar of 2022. Today's topic will be learning how to grow your local government agency in a remote world. As we probably know, a lot of us are transitioning into remote and hybrid lifestyles. I'm sure you can see my cat in the back. That's been my sort of coworker for the past 3 years, and I'm sure you will have some people at home too. So we're going to go into some tips and tricks, but focusing more specifically on local government websites and local governments. Some brief housekeeping. As always, there's going to be a recorded version of the webinar on the Revize site after, so don't worry about it if you mishear some information. Next is we're also going to have a Q&A after the webinar. So any questions that you might think of while we're going through, just jot them down, save them in your head, and at the end we'll answer them. And lastly, the best way to keep up with us for upcoming informative webinars is to follow us on all social medias. We are on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, so we're everywhere. A little bit about us before we've gotten started. We've been around for over 20 years and have a lot of experience in government website best practices. We specialize in beautiful and functional web design for government agencies. Although government agencies are our niche, we've really perfected some of the features that we create for government websites. We also do websites for water authorities, housing authorities, public works department, anything you can think of. And lastly, we're based out of Troy, Michigan, but we serve government agencies all across the US. Actually, close to the end of 2021, we expanded to Houston to accommodate our large clientele there in Texas. So we serve anyone across the US. And your host today is me, marketing specialist, Dani Esterline. I hope you haven't gotten tired of seeing me because I'm here to stay. And here's a brief overview of the contents of the webinar. As I've been witnessing different webinars, I really think it's important to be as concise and digestible as possible because I know that there's other things going on. So I'm just going to take this in some sections, give you your tips and tricks, and leave you to the rest. So we're going to go over why this matters. We're going to have a short video sort of explaining the importance and the levels that hybrid and remote work has really raised its magnitude in the past couple of years. And then we're going to go into ways to grow your local government agency in a remote world. So I'll wait for those 4 trends, so maybe it'll be a little bit of a surprise. And of course, we'll have the Q&A. So this is why this matters. Remote work is here to stay. Actually, an article on Protocol recorded that Salesforce, a very popular CRM system, which I'm sure you're familiar with, surveyed more than 20,000 global residents and respondents, in a range of industries and income levels, and more than 60% said that remote work will become the norm. With that, around 40% of Americans said that they would switch jobs if they could work remotely. So we're really seeing this integration of a new normal. I'm sure that that's a phrase that we might be tired of hearing at this point. However, it is here to stay. Next is local governments are actually finding efficiency in remote work. I found this just from conversations that I've had by attending some of the municipality conferences across the US and speaking to city managers and public information officers, etc. Actually, an article on ICMA, International County Management Association, had a quote by Jason Grant, who's the Director of Advocacy for the International County Management Association. And he says that that's where remote work at the end of the day becomes more important. Is this a way that we provide better programs and services to the people? Are we more effective and more efficient? That's what the city managers are going to consider as they look to the future of it. So much like the other quote from protocol.com, even though local government is a niche industry with different hurdles, obstacles, things that people are trying to overcome, we're still seeing some efficiency and effectiveness in employees working from home in that route. And lastly, remote work could recruit a new generation of talented employees. A poll, actually a September Paris poll, found that a new tolerance for remote work or delayed plans to return to the office may be a relief for Gen Z employees, especially those ages 18 to 24, who make up the generation most likely to say they're not comfortable returning to the office full time. So I'm actually a Gen Z, so I can perfectly attest to this sentiment. I think Gen Zs are really used to convenience, and I graduated in 2019, so having that sort of jump into the workforce in a remote world has given me that as a background of my knowledge, and I think it's made me a better worker. So now we're going to go ahead and watch this video, and let me see if I can just make sure that I'm sharing the sound here. So this is why working from home is good for business. Like I said, I'm going to focus in on these tips and tricks for local government agencies because that's one of our largest audiences. But this video has a lot of key takeaway points, and I want you to pay attention to how he refers to remote work.
The basic problem with working in an office is you're just not in control of your work environment. Howdy, my name is Matt, and I'm the CEO of Automatic, the company behind WordPress.com, Jetpack, and WooCommerce. We're coming up on over 800 employees, and they live everywhere, from California to Alabama, Mississippi, to where I live in Texas. They're also in 67 countries: Canada, Mexico, India, New Zealand. Some of them choose not even to have a home base. They're nomads. Whether they're in RVs or traveling through Airbnbs, they're in new places every day, week, or month, as long as they can find good Wi-Fi. We don't care where they are. Our focus on distributed work wasn't something that happened accidentally. It was a conscious choice from the very beginning. In fact, you'll probably notice I don't use the word remote because it sets up the expectation there are some people that are essential, some that aren't. I use the word distributed to describe what we do, where everyone is on an equal playing field. I think a distributed workforce is the most effective way to build a company. The key is that you have to approach it consciously. When we started WordPress, many of the first 20 hires were people who I'd never met in person, but we'd already collaborated online, sometimes for years. I wanted to continue that as the company grew for one simple reason. I believe that talent and intelligence are equally distributed throughout the world, but opportunity is not. In Silicon Valley, you have the big tech companies fishing from essentially the same small pond or bay. By making the company distributed, we can fish from the entire ocean. Instead of hiring someone who grew up in Japan but now lives in California, you can gain someone who lives, works, wakes up in the morning, and goes to sleep every night, wherever they are in the world. They bring a different understanding of that culture and a different lived experience day to day. At the base of the decision to go distributed, there's a desire to give people autonomy over how they do their work. Unless you're in a role where specific hours are important, you can make your own schedule. Everyone can have a corner office. They can have their windows. They can have the food they want to eat. You can choose when there's music and when there's silence. You can choose what temperature the room should be. You can choose to save the time you'd spend commuting every day and put that into other things that are more important to you. A distributed workforce is ideal for a technology company, but I often get the question, hey, this works great for y'all, but what about everyone else? If you already have an office, there are a few things you can do to build distributed capability. First, document everything.
And I'm going to go ahead and stop it there because some of the points he touches on, I'll actually go ahead and touch on that as we go through the webinar. But I think it's interesting how he talks about remote work as distributed work, because I would argue that local government officials are extremely crucial for residents and community safety, well-being, success, although they're not, first aid workers or nurses or doctors or things like that. They provide these timely informations and make it a safe community. So, saying distributed is just a nice way to accommodate to all of these employees and roles that are coming from all over the world. I think in local governments, it probably is all over the state or the county. So let's go into the first point of learning how to grow your local government in a remote world. So this kind of seems like a no-brainer, but the point of this webinar is to give new tangible tricks or things that we know has been working from the past couple of years that can help accelerate growth within employees at local governments internally, which will externally benefit the company. So before the pandemic started, I'm sure we were all accustomed to a usual 9-to-5 workplace. I think sometimes it can depend on the person, especially local government officials. I know some city clerks that will stay at the office more like 2 hours after 5 p.m. just to get something done. And some people will do that. But now, since we've transitioned into this remote hybrid world, there's sort of became this idea that everybody can have access to you at any time because everybody has their phone or computer, when that's not how it was in other jobs or before the pandemic, where when it was 9 to 5, you were clocking out, you were going home, you were warming up your food, you were putting on some Netflix. So with maintaining and setting boundaries, especially for local government officials, this can help you avoid burnout. A lot of government employees wear many hats, and so focusing in on certain tasks is always great. But one thing that I found in my research for maintaining boundaries for work life is practicing statements like, I will be available from this time to this time via Slack or Teams, with alluding to, after this time, I am not available to you. That is my personal time. And I think that's really important for local government officials too. You may want to work personally after your work hours are done, but you don't have to answer to somebody at that point because it's your time or your personal time to refresh and reinvigorate before getting back into it. Also, taking breaks is a great way to avoid burnout, especially when working from home. As we spend a lot of time just sitting in front of the computer, and personal breaks help motivate you to have new ideas and creativity. So an article on Indeed says that taking personal breaks during remote work can help with energy boosts, increased motivation, improved problem solving, better productivity, among many other benefits, which I'm sure that we've all been there before, where we're either writing somebody or working on a task where we feel stuck on something that hasn't been easy for us in the past. We take a 15-minute break, come back, and then it's like our brain, we're seeing it with a new pair of eyes almost. Deciding when to take breaks is crucial too. When you need to focus, when it's time to eat, when your kids need interaction. I'm sure that a lot of people are working home with their families. So making sure that we're making time for ourselves while, maintaining productivity. And next is measurable goals. So I'm so sorry if you attended college and are sick of hearing this from your marketing professors. At least I know I was at the end of my undergrad degree. But SMART measurable goals are really the key to any sort of job success. And what SMART stands for are goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. I think that that's a huge facet of importance for local government employees. Because a common personality trait is sort of a very motivated individual that wants to make their community better. And sometimes those ideas can just become lost in translation because we're having so many big ideas and we don't have a plan for it. So having a SMART goal is going to be more effective to not only yourself, because you're going to feel more motivated and better because you finished your goal on it when you thought you would, but it's also going to help your community and your residents. So for example, making a task or a goal of, I'm going to finish and upload these agenda minutes to our site and send out a press release by Wednesday, 4 p.m. Something like that it's measurable, it's specific. Notice I say specific, it's realistic, timely, attainable, all of those things. Next is also making a workstation, which I find really important. I think that there's a lot of people that, let's say that they don't have the perfect office space, they don't have another office room in their house or an open window. There are ways that we can open up our area so that we have our control station of focus. For me, what that means is opening the one window in my room, even though it doesn't allow for much light. And also I purchased a ring light. I got that on Amazon. I can link it after the webinar is over. But this just sorts of helps with maintaining a professional space. It's just like your teachers told you or your college professors told you, when you have a clean environment and a clean space, you're going to do better on your tests because you're working in a cohesive environment. The same is true for working at home. And lastly, another skill set that I would suggest for local government officials to help improve their organization while working from hybrid or remote is using tools like Facebook Business Suite and Canva Planner. Now, I know that there are some local government employee officials that might not necessarily run their social media, but I'm sure that that's a proponent of your organization. So whether you're the person that's doing that or not, this is a great free tool to plan your posts ahead of time and make sure that it's all done and put away. So you don't have to worry about it and it's not flooding your mind. I know Facebook Business Suite is free and you can post pages for your organization on Instagram and Facebook. I think some local governments like counties and cities I've seen or talked to in my conferences use the Facebook Business Suite. And also improving wellness with the digital detox. So I know that we probably could have guessed that during the pandemic, we saw a rise in screen time among adults from 11 hours to 19 hours a day, which is a lot. And a 2018 scientific study found that limiting social media use to 30 minutes a day leads to a significant improvement in well-being. So how do we do that? How are we actually going to do the digital detox? Because it's really easy to just say that we are going to do it. There are some things like turning off your notifications. That's a great tool to practice. Let's say even on those 15-minute breaks, you know, if you're going to turn off your notifications while you go on a walk, 15 minutes probably won't hurt anything and will, you know, clear the slate from your mind of some other work matters. Leaving the phone out of your bedroom before you go to sleep at night. That way you're not bothered by texts that might or emails that might flood in at 8 p.m. Those are just some other ways to make sure you're maintaining your personal boundaries and you know, having that digital detox. Next is collaborative internal communication platforms. So this is really big. And like I said, since I was introduced to the workforce about 3 years ago, right at the onset of the pandemic, I was really familiar with Slack, Google Talks, and Teams. And I think Slack was sort of the front runner in this new industry. It's interesting, you know, before the pandemic, when we thought about Zoom, we were like, what is that? And now we use it as like a verb, not a noun. It's let's hop on the Zoom, let's Zoom. So we're going to weigh paid versus free plans and what our organization and what our team members' goals are. So I'm going to go ahead and share this Teams, and please let me know if you don't see it. So I'm opening up a window for these Teams. If somebody could just put in the chat, if like a thumbs up if they're seeing this page, because sometimes the shares can be kind of funny. But this is Microsoft Teams versus paid, and I'll link all of these links too. So it'll be a good thing for you to compare and weigh the benefits. As we most know, usually the paid features come with some extra gadgets, and it's no different with Microsoft Teams. So this is where I'm talking about that it's different for local governments depending on your uses and your needs. So let's say we're talking about a very large city or a very large county like Clark County, Nevada. If they're having a meeting or a board meeting, they probably might go over 60 minutes sometimes with their meetings. So that might be a problem for Microsoft Teams Free, which cuts off at 60 minutes. Within that, there's also file storage. So with Microsoft Teams Paid, there's 1 TB per organization. So that might be effective for sharing agenda minutes, things like that. So and now we're going to check out Slack here. So Slack, I'm just showing you this. I think it's really easier to weigh the benefits when it's in this consumable sort of bar, you know, pros and cons or differences sort of layout. But one thing with free Slack is that after 10,000 messages, the message is erased. So I wouldn't recommend the free Slack platform for local governments because we're moving into this new world where before emails were the receipts of, hey, I sent you this on this date, whereas paid plans can help accommodate to larger projects or so employees don't forget and, you know, can search whatever conversation that they were saying or we're talking about earlier. Another big thing is usability. So spending too much time training defeats the point of new technology, right? And we one thing at Revize we like to say with our website, which is what we specialize in, is making websites, is if the website takes so long to train, it's probably not an effective website. If there's so much background knowledge that needs to be used, that's why our websites are for very non-technical people. Anybody can use and access and edit them. The same is true for these sort of platforms. If you're spending time, money, resources training some of your employees on how to access one versus the other, that might be a telling sign of which one might be easier. But I think it's really a preference, and I'm going to link those for you guys to research on your own. We're going to go over cloud storage in a little bit, but basically sort of any Slack and Teams are storage platforms because they're all things right there through the internet. And so they keep things in a secure place without anybody actually having to come into the office. So it's a lucrative tool for local governments. And lastly is privacy and security. So something just to consider when deciding, am I going to use Google Hangout, Teams, Slack, is server sign-on optimization, just making sure that we're being able to sign on and that auto provision measures are there. So it's a secure platform. Again, these are some of the differences between Microsoft Teams and Slack. So before I was just going over the difference between the Slack and the Teams of paid versus non-paid, because I think it's important to see what's going there. These are some things that are different between these. And the reason that I chose Microsoft Teams and Slack is because throughout many of the conversations that I've had with government officials through traveling and meeting government officials at conferences, it's always either Slack or Teams. There are other platforms out there, but these are just the ones that I hear all the time during my discussions. So here you have video conferences. Microsoft Teams allows you for 250 users versus 15 users with Slack. You're limited to per account for guest access on Microsoft Teams. Unlimited collaboration with Slack, up to 10,000 messages. Over here with Slack, like I said, this is one sort of prompt that you will see in Slack with the free version of some older messages may not be shown because your workspace has over 10,000 messages. So that might not be good if somebody has put something on there that they need back and they thought it would stay forever, but it obviously can't because that doesn't happen with the paid version, or excuse me, the unpaid version. So next we're going to go over some tech trends. I actually wrote a blog about tech trends for 2022, which you can check out on our website. But we did see in 2021 some cases of local government being hit by ransomware attacks. I can link that below, or I'll link it after the webinar is over, but something happened in a municipality in Ohio where their ransomware was attacked, and it took a couple of days for them to get back up and running. And it's really important to understand the ways that we can protect ourselves from cybersecurity, because I think that at some point, cybersecurity can seem a little bit intimidating, and it's not meant to be that. I think that there are just some easy tools that local government agencies can use just to make sure that they're, following some best practices. I'm not going to go through all of these. Again, I'm linking everything after. It's going to be on our YouTube channel, on our site. So you'll have all of these great resources to look. But keeping software up to date is a big one for cybersecurity. Avoid opening suspicious emails. I think that that's a huge one, especially some emails don't come across suspicious really until you look at the name or perhaps the content of that. That's a big one. Keeping hardware up to date. So if you have an outdated computer that's really old and somebody attacks your system, because it's so old, the cyber attack is going to take longer to repair. So making sure that the computer hardware is up to date is going to protect your organization. Using a secure file sharing desk solution. So we'll get into some more of those later, but I know Dropbox is one example of a place where you can store some things in the cloud. Using antivirus, malware, using a VPN, checking links before you click, and making sure that you have different passwords for each login and store them in the secure place. So you wouldn't want to share your passwords in a file sharing location that a bunch of people have access to. That wouldn't be the most effective. So let's go ahead and get back to it. And next is cloud-based. Just like I said earlier, I think the essence of the cloud can kind of be intimidating for people that aren't technical or don't have a technical background like myself. But cloud-based is essentially anything through the internet that's stored. So Slack is a form of a cloud, Teams is a form of a cloud, and these services actually allow you to manage IT infrastructure entirely remotely without security risk. So again, it's a great thing. And some examples that might be effective for local government agencies for cloud storing are Asana, Trello, and Basecamp. These are project management cloud services. So this would be great if you're having a community project. Let's say you're rebuilding a park in your county or city. This would be a great those would be great platforms to choose from. Next to a tech trend that we're anticipating for this coming year is more apps integrations into, government websites. And the way that I would like to put it is sort of like a car analogy. So a government agency's car is their website. And so this is what I mean by that. Stay with me now, is that a car is somebody's first impression of you. You need it to get places and you depend on it. Much like we depend on our cars, residents depend on your site to gather information, to pay their bills. It helps drive economic development. All of those things are something you need a good steady base. You want to make sure that it has all of the necessary features to keep you afloat. And that's true for a government website too. So Revize, we make the websites, but there are app integrations that you can feature with your government websites that are sort of like the car's like reverse camera. So it's something extra that adds an element of new tech modernization and helps people in their day-to-day efforts. So I know that some apps that we see for government websites are things like Whisper, CityBot, all of those sorts of integrations we're going to attempt to see in 2022. And next is identity and access management. So that's short, or the abbreviation for that is IAM. And that's like the user editing the site because they are authenticating themselves against the database. So this goes one step beyond password protection. It's pretty much essentially the same thing as when you're on your iPhone. Let's say if you have an iPhone, you use your face detector to open your iPhone. So we're going to start seeing some of those sorts of measures into fruition to help protect organizations, because as you can see in this article that was written right before the new year, that some zero trust cybersecurity, identity and access management, cloud migration, and apps are going to dominate the discourse for government technology. And this was actually found on a government tech site. And next is internal motivation. So I think that that's very important for working remote hybrid, because we're used to, I think, pre-pandemic sort of being around other people, but when we're virtual, one obstacle to face is building rapport with other employees and making sure we're motivated. So one tool to keep local government agencies, workplaces, employees motivated is to create channels for separate team tasks and sort of root each other up. According to a poll by Jobs in ME, 85% of employees feel more motivated when management provides regular updates. What is it, the quote that an employee that feels appreciated will always do more than expected? I think that that's really, if anything, more important during a pandemic, because we're not speaking to the people that we speak with on our teams all the time. So I would suggest something for a local government is, hey, thanks, or great job with the post on our website today. Great job, Sam, on the press release. Uploading a picture of somebody that's doing something in the community, a community project, something like that. Also, when I was searching internal motivation tactics for local government agencies, one thing that I thought was sort of a neat idea was employee newsletter. So this is what I mean by that. Normally organizations have newsletters for their residents, or businesses have them for their clients. What I would suggest to improve employee morale for a local government agency is an employee newsletter to share updates of new projects and highlight new employees, have a Q&A section for commonly asked questions within that time span. All of these are great ways to really create sort of a company culture in a place where we're not meeting face to face. And something like that, I think, can be really effective for local government officials, because I think that there's a lot of talent that can be found within the hiring process when it comes to that. So, you know, asking people, where are they from? Why were they interested in being with this county, sort of opens up a discussion and makes people feel more welcome. And virtual learning, so that's free ongoing training, professional development, and courses. So this was an article I actually read in Forbes, and it was by Stacey Burke, and essentially what she was saying is that a lot of local government officials want to be good at their jobs, right? They want to make sure that they're improving, much like anybody else. They don't just want to stay stagnant. We know that doctors and nurses go to other classes to refresh and sharpen their saws. The same should be true for local government officials. So one thing Stacey Burke suggests is free ongoing training. But this is kind of funny that she says this, and I was like, that's pretty true, is to not assign these virtual trainings outside of work hours, because that's going to discourage people that are, you know, trying to, you know, maintain their work-life balance. But if you had something like how to attempt diverse demographics in our news release, and I think it's a great way, and local government officials are usually pretty highly self-motivated. They want to get better, so this is just another way to get better. And the bottom line is that remote and hybrid work are here to stay for the foreseeable future. You know, as local government agencies grow, because they're going to continue growing, residents are going to keep moving in, projects are going to keep continuing despite some of the external factors around the world that we can't control. The way to do this is to stay informed and use the best government website platform, making sure we're using some of these best practices that I touched on during the webinar. It's just another great way to make sure we're doing what we can. And hybrid and remote work has brought so many good things to a lot of local government agencies and their employees. You know, I've met a lot of people that are mothers and have young children, and are getting to spend more time with them, or have, you know, older parents and are getting to spend time with them while they work. You know, we've really just seen this huge drastic change. So I'm hoping that you learned something new with this webinar, and thank you so much for staying on. We're going to go into some contact information. So if you have any other questions regarding our product, which is government websites, or you just would like to chat, you can email us at contact@revize.com. You can see other webinars at www.revize.com. And we're on all of the socials. Like I said, I'm going to have this webinar on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook after it's recorded. And now we're going to go into a brief Q&A if anybody has any questions. So I must have done a really good job of explaining, because it doesn't look like anybody has questions. But thanks so much again for everybody for hopping on. And it's really been a pleasure. I love doing these webinars. Also, if you have any ideas of subject matters that you'd like to see covered, you can always email us, or you can contact us at that email for some webinars you'd like to see in the future. Thanks, and have a good one.